Hello, dear friends. It's our sincere pleasure to welcome you again. And today we'll talk to the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, thank you very much for the previous video, for the great inspiration and a huge incentive to act. You were right when you said that together we can do a lot, and that there is certainly a way out of even seemingly the most hopeless situation. And not just one way out, but at least two. And it's a very important time now. It is time for all those people who have common sense, who really value life, who choose humanity and the chance to survive. It is very important for these people to remain humans first and foremost, and to remain stable in this, as you said, like electrons in the orbit of atoms, despite everything they have to live through and to experience, despite criticism and opposition. And it's a very important time to act now. This is the time of responsibility of every human being. It is important for everyone to ask themselves a question, what can I do today? You know, Igor Mikhailovich, I think it is very important that you've raised this topic. It is so important that people act today and not postpone this for tomorrow or for later, because consciousness of many people tells them, well, now is not the time. Today you are somehow inadequate. You are not competent enough, not smart enough, not good enough, or not resourceful enough. And these numerous not enoughs paralyze and stop some people. And I think it is very important to convey the message that now is the best time to act.
In fact, today is a golden time, friends, really a golden time. A little time will pass, and all the media will be subject to stricter censorship. They will step on our tongues, and we will no longer be able to make such videos. Let me explain. The more severe the climate Cerberus will manifest itself, the more censorship there will be. It's normal and natural in the consumerist format. You can't get away from that. A simple example. A holiday resort was burning. Many people suffered. Yet the authorities forbade talking about it and showing it. Well, they kind of asked politely, but in fact, there was a ban. And what is interesting, and this was noticed by journalists, when there was COVID during that pandemic, they showed corpses and all the horrors. All the channels showed this, and it wasn't forbidden. Now, they've banned it. Why? The answer is very simple. Because authorities cannot do anything about climate change. And that's really true. They slip into basic stupidity. You know, it's like a mockery of our consciousness. I would say, imagine who they think we are when they tell us that the way to fight climate change is to cover glaciers with blankets, to paint something white so that it reflects the sun, so that the glaciers don't melt. But all normal, sensible people who have paid at least a little bit attention to this topic understand perfectly well that glaciers do not melt because of the sun, but because of the heat coming from the ground, meaning from the bowels of the earth, and most glaciers melt from below. What do blankets have to do with this? A simple question. All the worries of scientists are about making sure that penguins don't get the flu, that polar bears keep reproducing. It is literally like a mockery of humanity. This is true. Yet why is this happening? Because they're trying to somehow diminish the tragedy of the situation. I would say, to somehow distract people from the entire seriousness of the problem and show that climate is a minor issue, and it's actually easy to cope with. It's enough to paint everything white, to fill the ocean with pink dye. It'll absorb CO2 faster, and everything will be fine. But it's a shame that they think that we, people, ordinary and simple people, are such stupid idiots. They really think we are. Therefore, so that we don't talk with you about real events, so that we don't discuss what has happened, how severe the Cerberus has manifested itself once again, and how many of us have suffered, how many of us have been left without homes, and how hard life has become in our homes. That's why they will reduce our ability to communicate. This means that the censorship will keep intensifying. Right now, it is really a golden time. But don't be upset, friends. In fact, all this censorship won't last long. Why? Because very soon, all means of remote communication will disappear. There will be neither radio, nor internet, or telephones. There will be nothing. It will all disappear very quickly. Why? I'll explain. As of today, the situation in the upper layers of the atmosphere is critical. The atmosphere is really shrinking. The resistance and defense, that natural defense we had, the electromagnetic field and the density of our atmosphere, all of this is gradually collapsing and disappearing. Hence, the radiation will keep getting stronger. I mean, cosmic radiation, plus the solar activity, because the sun is accumulating power, just like any planet in the solar system, due to the cycle. And now, almost all the planets are manifesting themselves. Similarly to our planet Earth, just as we have problems due to the additional energy coming from outer space, so do the other planets. All this will lead us to having the same situation as, remember, at one of the forums, there was a story about the last man on Earth. Events there unfolded in an interesting way, and now we see these parallels. They've already started talking about censorship, and we can already see what is happening to the climate. And the more it goes on, the worse it's going to be. I'd like to share with you another very interesting piece of information. In connection with the accumulation of excess energy in the ocean, our scientists think that we are on the threshold of stronger and more powerful catastrophic manifestations of the climate, such as a mega typhoon. What does this mean? I'll try to explain. Imagine a powerful, destructive, and strong tornado with wind speeds of about 500 kilometers per hour on average. So it's a huge force. And now enlarge this tornado to the size of a giant typhoon, which destroys everything in its path at tremendous speed. In the history of our planet, similar things already happened. Typhoons like this can not only wipe out cities, they can turn mountains into plains. And this has happened. Imagine a giant tornado with tremendous power and force, which picks up everything at tremendous speed, collapsing houses, our metal structures, and just slamming everything into each other at tremendous speed. It's like a giant sandblaster, you know? The kind that blasts rust off metal structures, while this one is billions of times more powerful. It leaves nothing behind. It grinds metal into powder. Everything is heading to the point when we will see such manifestations. We will definitely face mega tsunamis and mega earthquakes. And this is not scaremongering, it is trite math. Imagine the excess energy that has accumulated inside our planet in huge quantities. We see magma eroding the lithospheric plates and our planet heating up. We see how much energy the ocean has already accumulated. Where do you think it's going to go? That's the answer for you. Nowhere. It will be released in one form or another, in a destructive form. And this energy will be directed against life. In other words, against us. It's all natural. Meanwhile, we will have nothing to counter it with if we proceed from the present-day situation, meaning, if we remain silent, continue to tolerate, in hope that someone will help us. Well, you yourselves understand that no one will come and help in any way. There is a way out. It has been voiced many times, and there is no point in talking about it again, about the need to unite and to establish a scientific center. We still have plenty of time, and perhaps it will happen. Then we'll have a chance, provided it doesn't happen too late. If we fail to establish this center, if we fail to create the conditions for true scientists to really unite and start acting exactly in the direction of, I would say, cushioning this whole situation, then we'll see a lot of interesting events, such that modern humanity hasn't seen before, so to say. That's how it is.
As you said, there's little time, but lots of tasks are yet to be solved.
There are lots of tasks. In fact, we have a huge task before us. First and foremost, it is to create an umbrella. As we said, it's clear, an umbrella or a shield. It doesn't matter. After that video, we were flooded with suggestions to spray something in outer space.
Gold dust.
Yes, to spray some kind of gold dust that would reflect the radiation. You see, we are used to thinking stereotypically, so our consciousness foists such ideas on us. That is, some kind of mirrors that would reflect the sun rays. I'll put it simply. But what can we even counter neutrinos with? We can at least somehow see and detect neutrinos. But the energy that is coming is precisely energy, and it goes exactly into the bowels of our Earth. We cannot detect this specific radiation yet. We have started to understand what it is only indirectly. We see its manifestations. We begin to understand at least something. So far, yes, we don't have enough capacity in people. By the way, remember, about 8 years ago, the Allatra Physics was published. And at that time, as soon as it was published and presented, various questions started coming in, and various people began to come, mostly oriented, those who had to do with the scientific environment. They were oriented towards the ways of applying the Allatra Physics in practice. And for some reason, everybody was oriented towards creating some new kinds of weapons or things that sell well and are in great demand, like new computers and the like, you see? Whereas in fact, thanks to this test, actually, it was a serious, deep test. The Allatra Physics is indeed immensely deep and real, and there is a lot more that can be done based on it. But in actual fact, only a few people from among scientists understood what we were talking about. And thanks to that, they joined us. Exactly because they understood the entire depth of that very Allatra Physics, although for the majority of scientists, it was extremely incomprehensible and evoked a smile for some of them. They smiled because they think the way most of us do, friends. I mean, if there is some kind of radiation, then we must have something to counteract it. What can it be? And that's where thoughts immediately arise, sort of.
To launch a construction site in outer space, yes.
Absolutely right. Some kind of construction in space.
Iron, nickel.
Right. Iron, nickel, to spray gold or something else. Where will we get that gold to spray it? And how would it help? A simple question, right? Again, how can we do it? We can't. Whereas those who have at least some capabilities are focused on making money, not spending it. Everything is very simple, ridiculously simple. Well, it's not all that bad. There are positive aspects in all of this too. The more difficult the task, the more enjoyable it is to solve it, right? And coming from this perspective, from the entire complexity of the task, it is very important, you know, what kind of people actually join in solving these tasks. One true scientist is much more important than a million philosophizers who don't even understand what they are talking about. This is really true. Thank God we have a certain potential. Yes, it's not that big. Yes, we cannot do a lot of things today. Due to certain events, we have even further limited our capabilities. Well, it's not us who have limited them. We have been limited. But in this regard, there is a huge positive aspect. I will tell you, for understanding, about 10 years ago, based on ancient legends and myths, and the quantum Zeno effect, on such a mix, we had an understanding of what can actually be tried. It's an ordinary device, let's say, but with peculiar effects. Naturally, we needed certain conditions for its testing. And with that issue, it's a serious issue. Those who understand what this is and what we are talking about understand the whole seriousness of the issue. we tried to reach out to the leaders of several countries, or rather of 3 countries, because the device was supposed to be tested in the field, precisely on these territories. The funniest part is that these people were not the ones with whom this issue should have been resolved. They aren't someone you can just casually visit, like we visit each other. You have to go through some intermediaries, and there are a lot of problems. Thus, we spent a few years and never reached anyone. That's how it happened. This issue was too fantastical, not even an issue. We actually needed a solution. But in fact, it all looked like science fiction. Let me explain. To cut a long story short, we didn't manage to get to the prominent people and obtain their blessing. So, a certain group of volunteers correctly chose a specific place and decided to simply test this device. They calculated many times to ensure that it wouldn't cause any harm, whereas the benefit, I'll put it mildly, of reducing the effect of climate events was expected to be extremely positive. What did we notice during the device's operation? At first, it seemed like there was no difference between it working and not working. You know, it's like having a microwave in the house while it is raining outside. You turn the microwave on and off, but it is still raining. So, we had the same situation. Because it was all experimental, and even consciousness actually resisted the very understanding of it all. But eventually, over the years of observation, we've seen that this territory, and I've already marked the territory to you. It's a huge territory. It became different from other territories. To make it clear, I'll try to explain it carefully. In fact, if we trace it, during all these years, the level of climate change in those territories has been much higher than in the rest of the world. But there have been far fewer climate disasters. Even though all the conditions were supposed to not only be equivalent based on this indicator, like everywhere else, but even to exceed it, because the conditions for climate disasters in those regions are much higher than in many other regions, which are now suffering much more from disasters than this territory. That's the point. Obviously, this device cannot remove these manifestations. It's not the shield we were talking about, but the climate events were rarer and less powerful. Although there were all the conditions. I'll say it again. Exactly in the region where this device was working, there were all the conditions for climate change to manifest itself much more strongly and more frequently. At least everything was supposed to be at the same level of climatic events as all over the world. Given the geography, given the magma ascent and the proximity to the north, all the conditions actually indicated that there should have been many more climatic events, and they should have been much more destructive. But we saw a different picture. Observing it over many years, we tried to calculate. I'll put it this way. Perhaps we were mistaken or too presumptuous to think that a microwave oven switched on at home can influence the weather outside the window, although it really does look that way from the point of view of an observer who doesn't understand the whole essence and depth of this issue. But thanks to certain people, let's say, well, I would say the main trigger was Konstantin Putnik in Chelyabinsk. You know him. A lot has been said about him, and you won't believe what I'm about to say. Right now, I would embrace him as if he were my own brother, and I would thank him very much. And I'm saying, thank you very much. Yes, we've started having a lot of problems. We've lost huge opportunities. Yes, we were kicked out of that territory. And because of that, because we were kicked out, a certain group of scientists who were helping us couldn't continue to work with us. Why? As we've already explained, the law is the law, and by cooperating with an unwanted organization, they would be putting themselves in an illegal situation, for which, if someone wanted that, they could be held responsible. Moreover, criminally responsible. And it's not good for a person to go to jail for trying to save all of humanity and for helping his country a lot. That is not humane. So the natural decision we made is that people stop cooperating and all connections are cut. We don't know if it's forever or for a certain period of time. It is not us who made that decision, and we cannot influence it in any way. But what did it lead to? It led to that device being dismantled and evacuated from that territory. Why? Since it is banned, it is banned. And we began to observe. I don't think that in the near future we would have decided to turn it off. This device was very valuable for observation. These are details. You don't need them, friends. But we really noticed that the bar for climate events was much lower than anywhere else in the world. However, thanks to these good friends, including representatives of the Prosecutor General's office, who made this decision, we had to turn off our device. So, 20 days have passed. We were literally talking about this yesterday, and first observations have shown that there is no mistake. Literally, within 20 days, a lot of things have started to change. It means that there is actually a flying arrow effect. So, just imagine. I'll explain a little bit. Maybe it won't be clear to some people, but to those who study these subjects, it will be clear. Imagine, there's energy, okay? I mean, we all encounter this energy. But is there this energy, or is there no energy? And what is energy? It's a big question. We see a lot of manifestations, electrical energy, I don't know. It is formed, mechanical, well, many different kinds of energy, but I will say the following, friends. Energy does not flow from anywhere to anywhere. It does not exist if there is no target. Imagine there are two objects, A and B. For example, it will be more convenient for you. There's A and B. Energy can pass from A to B. However, if there's no B, no energy flows from A. Next, there is object A and there is object B. And if object A shares energy with object B, they both age, deteriorate, and wear out. However, if there is no object B, object A can exist forever. Well, nothing is eternal, but let's say it can exist for a very long time without any changes. And this applies to an atom as well as to any planet, planetary system, galaxy, to anything. Why? Because micro-objects affect macro ones if certain conditions are present. Question, what is energy? That's a good question. Any energy. Actually, it would be more correct to say, any action is a consequence of information. And that's where we come, to such a small impasse of quantum mechanics, I would say. What we have encountered allows us to solve an unsolvable problem. You see, this is indeed quantum gravity. In other words, gravitational interaction at the level of quantum mechanics. It was impossible to even think about it because there is nothing to operate with. It's the same regarding what information is, what space is, and what time is. I'll put it this way. It's impossible to solve a problem. For example, you need to get from point A to point B, but you don't know where that point B is. It's really like an electron in the orbit, sort of everywhere and nowhere. You will never solve this problem mathematically, but when you have a clearly defined position, a location, then you can easily calculate that. So, we've got such a chance to calculate it easily. Well, it's easy to say easily, but in fact, it implies a lot of work. So, there are still many blank spots and lots of work. But in any case, we see the goal objectively, and that means a lot. So it is not all that bad. I understand that many people will not understand what I'm talking about now. Why? Well, here's a simple example, friends. I take a flashlight, I go outside, and I use it, okay? Especially if there's a slight fog or it is nighttime, and the flashlight is powerful. After all, light is energy, right? It is energy. I point it, and it flows, right? But how does a quantum of light emerge? Why? A simple question. It emerges and flies at the same speed at which it flies, meaning at the speed of light. Is someone pushing it? No, it has simply emerged. And the question of the emergence of a quantum is what? And then it starts flying. It is energy that is being transferred. To where? To nowhere. Only a stupid person would say that. Why? Because if we go to the level where this quantum of light emerges and so on, we will see that it goes from one point to another, to the air molecule with which it collides. Thanks to this, we see it and many other things. In other words, it cannot go to nowhere. If we have nothing towards which energy can flow, energy cannot flow. It is transferred from one body to another. I'll put it this way. That's the entire understanding. Whereas, if there are no bodies, there's only a flow. There's a flow. And this flow is not chaotic. And look what we encounter. This is also very interesting. From our position, or from the position of physics, clear to us, sort of macro physics, when we look at quantum interactions, we have such an understanding that there is chaos there. Indeed, try to identify an electron, where it is located in the atom, right? I mean, we only call it orbit, but actually, an electron is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, but it's in a strictly defined position. How? Wherever you poke, there it is, right? Or wherever you poke, it's not there. And there are many such phenomena related to these microparticles. However, when we go beyond them, there is a strictly defined flow of a non-material structure, which is not energy, but which creates it. And let's say the compaction of this energy creates matter. Why? If we take any particle and destroy it, what does it turn into? Into energy. Okay, a simple question. What is an electron?
It is also an energy of interaction.
Is it a body?
It's a particle.
A body has certain parts, the top, the bottom, and something else. Whereas, pardon me, an electron is energy. It's just that this energy exists in a special state, and it actually determines the properties of an atom. This energy affects them. And that means what? That means a fragment of information which arranges everything in a strict order and puts everything in its place. And despite the seeming chaos and disorder, there are very strict laws there, which are formed as a result of what is under that chaos. Therefore, understanding all this complexity, and at the same time simplicity, I think it is possible to come to understand what exactly affects our core, the core of our planet, how it affects it, and how we can protect ourselves from this influence. This requires just a little bit of effort and attention from a great many very smart people. And do you know what else is difficult? The difficulty is that not everyone possesses scientific thinking, so to say, sort of an ability for scientific thinking, which is an ability to focus on one goal while having an expanded view. It is so hard to explain this. Well, I would put it this way. It's a ray of light that illuminates one point without scattering. If we would turn our consciousness, the consciousness of ordinary people, you and us, friends, into a stream of light, it would be such a firework. There's no other way to call it.
A nebula.
Such a light show, since we illuminate everything at the same time. While in fact, the ability to delve deep into science, namely into mental processes, and the search for solutions, is important because consciousness becomes like a laser beam that steadily illuminates one point. Far from everyone has this ability. Many people have a very broad perception. They are experts in all fields. They understand and know everything, but they are unable to hold their attention on one point even for a moment. This is true. And what is the difference between true scientists and philosophers? For philosophers, it is easy to tell. Talk, philosophize, understand, or not understand. Well, this is purely mental work, whereas practitioners are distinguished precisely for their understanding of the mechanics, I would say, meaning of what really exists and what was actually invented and fantasized by people. That's the difference that exists. Therefore, we need people who are able to focus their attention on solving a problem and not on illuminating the whole world with their own light, so to say. We need not showmen, but real scientists. This is also important. Yes, one can philosophize a lot, and here we run into all kinds of things. Quantum gravity, and a lot of other questions are raised in this case, which so far, let's say, theoreticians struggle to give the right answer to. But practitioners, I'll say it once again, practitioners have found specific answers as to what information is and what energy is. These are the most fundamental things. Literally, yesterday, we were talking with our friends, and there was a clear, confirmed substantiation of what quantum gravity is. For those who don't understand, it's not interesting, but I will try to explain with an example that will be clear to all of you, friends. At our forums and in many videos, we discussed the health capsule, and it was science fiction for everyone. What is science fiction? It's an event that is beyond the horizon. In other words, there is a horizon which moves away, no matter how far we walk. So the health capsule, then
The replicator,
right, and the shield which we should make and set up around our planet. These are no longer beyond the horizon events, and not the horizon, but they are much closer than the horizon. Do you understand what I mean, friends? That is, these are real events which have led us to a real path. Yes, there is still plenty of work to do. In the previous video, Tatiana and I actually mentioned our optimistic scientists. And more than everyone else, they advocated that we don't need anyone. We will do our best. No one will hear us anyway. So we'll do it ourselves. This is exactly that group which was dealing with research and development as well. They actively participated in this very research project, so to say. They noticed the difference. Insights came to them, sometimes extraordinary ones. And we had a lot of debates on various topics. Sometimes we disagreed. However, their understanding was much greater than that of the rest of us. Why? Because they were engaged in this particular project. We have a wider range of work. They saw it all more clearly and understood it better. And their triumph is significant. It is significant because, I would put it this way. In that non-existent space, clear contours of reality have appeared. This means a whole lot. And based on it all, it turns out that all of us, our hopes and dreams were thrown a huge lemon, and we have made a wonderful lemonade out of it simply because obviously God wants it to be this way. There is no other way to say it. So friends, we mustn't despair and mustn't give up. Yes, there is plenty of work to do. Yes, our opportunities are minimal and relying on ourselves. And sorry, I'm pessimistic in this case. Why? Because I know the scope of work and its entire complexity. I also know how many blank spots we still have that we need to study and how much work has to be done. Our limited capabilities are extremely difficult communication and inability for numerous reasons to even sit down at the same table just like that and talk to our friends complicates everything. The point that we will possibly be heard is already, a matter of time. I would say even more, it's no longer a matter of time, but rather of the humaneness of certain people. To what extent they remain humans, and how much they value their own lives and the lives of other people, since there is no difference in this case anymore. It all depends on simple things. However, a lot depends on us too. If we succeed in finding a way, an opportunity to reach out to other people, we will actually be able to bring it all onto the rails of the creative society. Then, we will really gain tremendous opportunities. Why? I'll tell you this. Anyone can verify it. Why? Because these are facts. Everything is very simple. We take a look at the history of events in that region. While those are 3 countries, the ones that were within the coverage or the area of influence of this experimental device, so to say. And we look at those climatic events which took place before August 8th. Well, the 8th is too bold. Let's be honest. It is rather before the 10th. Up to August 10th of this year, 2023. And we look at what will happen afterwards. Precisely 20 days passed, and we have seen the difference. This is seen on a subtler plane, and it is something that is a little bit not quite visible yet. I think we will get more accurate information based on real events on all the cataclysms that will happen in the next 6 to 9 months. It will all level out and will be as it really is, without any reduction of effects and any interference, without any flying arrows and any effects that were described in ancient times in great detail. You see how important history is? Well, that doesn't matter. What matters is that this device works. We will get our main conclusions in about 3 or maximum 4 months. We will already know for sure, and we will see the outcome in 6 to 9 months, when all these effects will simply fade away. This indicates that human capabilities are really enormous, friends. And already now we can say that, in fact, we didn't spend so much effort and so many years in vain, and it wasn't in vain that we tried to do something. The only thing I regret is the time that we spent trying to reach those who are sitting behind a closed door. That was in vain. Well, again, many people, our friends, were hoping that they would be heard, that some kind of assistance would be provided. Yet, we should simply understand that to provide us with assistance and support means to admit that we are right. And to admit that we are right means to recognize that the entire scientific potential they possess is ineffective, doesn't comply with reality, and doesn't give any hope. So, who would go for that? And this also implies recognition of everything we say about the climate. While in this case, it means that it is necessary to objectively change, moreover, immediately, all the foundations of our life, and to accept either what we say about the creative society, or at least what Dr. Chalakian says. There's no other way to put it. Either his or our ideas should be accepted. It's not us who decide in this case, but the very fact is that there is a clear understanding and a great hope that we have a good chance. I'll put it this way. As a matter of fact, this is not quite pleasant news, but it's a very joyful one. In this case, there seems to be nothing to be happy about. Why? Because we ourselves will suffer from that. But on the other hand, this news adds optimism and fills us with joy, in the sense that we have at least seen the contours of our solution. On the one hand, such a situation is bad, but on the other hand, it seems to be good. The only question is what we will do. Although, again, our device didn't solve the problem and couldn't solve it 100% and protect some territory from climatic events. The external influence penetrated anyway, and it was quite tough, but it didn't come in such a significant amount and quality, meaning the events were much rarer and milder, I would say, which was wonderful for people. Now, it will gradually return to standard levels. And we were not joking when we mentioned an avalanche. Over time, climatic events will increase. The territory and the conditions themselves are favorable for that. Well, it would all come anyway, but later. Why? Because the effect which was created slowed down these processes, but it cannot eliminate them. In order to eliminate all these events that are taking place and are predetermined, or to put it simply, that are programmed in our fate, we need to change our fate. I'll put it in such simpler terms. Friends, I apologize for not being able to say many things straight and to call things by their proper names, but I hope you understand me. So, the news is both good and not very good. But for the most part, I think it's wonderful. And the most interesting thing is that we haven't given up and have made lemonade from that lemon. So, you see, even those who are trying to harm us are helping us, for which we thank them. And we thank you, friends. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being here. And once again, I apologize for the somewhat confusing manner of today's conversation. Yet, you are smart and wonderful people, and you understand the entire complexity. I want to share with you the facts and the real changes, and at the same time, to give you an opportunity to observe everything yourselves. You already know how to analyze, to compare, and to notice the difference before and after. Many of you have been doing this along with us for years, so you have something to observe and to compare. Yes, the situation is not good for us as humans, but, excuse me, it also creates conditions for us, the conditions ensuring that we are on the right path, and it gives us a tremendous chance to solve a seemingly unsolvable task. I'll tell you the following, friends. There are no unsolvable tasks. We can solve any problem if we really want to. Sometimes we lack knowledge. Sometimes we lack opportunities. But that's when it's a small group. However, if the group is big, the more intelligent people we have, who indeed strive for life, the more realistic the solution will be. Thank you, friends. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Peace be with you and God's love.